like before they do entry, like for a tag team, or like when we get crazy and you're just like, ah, it's just tits out, tummies in. Like, what else are we gonna do to be ready? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of 911 Delta Tethered for Life podcast. As usual, this episode may not be suitable for all listeners due to language and content, so listen with care and stay safe out there.
Hey everyone, we are back and we have Miss Brenda joining us tonight. She has hung up her headset after 20 years of service. We will talk about her career, so grab those headsets. Let's talk. All right, hey Miss Brenda, we thank you for joining us tonight. So we want you to go ahead and tell the audience that's listening a little bit about yourself.
hi, thanks for having me on. My name is Brenda Hernandez, and I am from Dubuque, Iowa. But we were just chatting a little bit before we started, and where I'm actually taking the call with you guys at is Dubuque, Iowa, is in the rearview mirror where I'm at, and then I'm in Illinois, and then I can actually see Wisconsin. So I'm located in a tri-state area. Um, but I've lived in Dubuque since 2005 when I graduated college. A little bit just about myself. I grew up in a small town in southeast Minnesota, of about 1,000. So that would be in the tri-state area of Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, just straight north of here. So I tend to migrate along the Mississippi. And I've just been working my way down south apparently. Um, a little bit about my background. When I was in high school, I worked for a local radio station. I was DJing, doing dances. I was working for the Department of Natural Resources, their forestry office. Um, Into horses, farming, country girl, things like that. My dad had been the transportation director for where I went to high school, and then he had took a job with the sheriff's office, and he was a jailer dispatcher. And so they were desperate for dispatchers, and they were like, well, Brenda works at the radio station and the DNR, so like you should see if she wants to do it. So I just applied for shits and giggles, like not thinking that like they were serious. And then 2 weeks after high school, like what sheriff hires an 18-year-old 2 weeks after high school? Like, like times have changed, right?
Yeah.
But I'm 41 now, so this has been a few years ago. I was telling you guys too, I am a like air quote retired, but I was a dispatcher for 20 years. So I started out in Houston County, Minnesota. I already had plans to go to college in Northeast Iowa. I was going to get my gen eds out of the way. I was never supposed to be a dispatcher. That wasn't my career. I was going for like agriculture, maybe like started showing interest in criminal justice, science. Then I had a teacher that was teaching me criminal justice who was in the border patrol. And then I was working in the sheriff's office, and then like I just couldn't get away from it. Right. So then I'm going to college, which is an hour away, working 12-hour shifts in Houston County, which is a rural county where there's one jailer, one dispatcher working. They kicked me loose on my own, like within a month. Right.
Oh, wow.
And it was terrifying because I remember like one of my first biggest calls was actually I know I'm jumping ahead, but it was a domestic standoff. And like thank God for like watching Rescue 911 as a child and my spidey instincts. Because I'm thinking, and like I'm a country girl, so like this woman's like calling and like, okay, get to safety. Oh, he has a gun. Like, can you lock yourself in a closet? And then like the director of the communications was like, I need to talk to you, and pulled me downstairs and reviewed the tape with me. And I thought for sure I was going to get fired. And he was like, you did a really good job. And I was like, oh my God, like that good constructive criticism stuck with me for, a really long time. It was really cute because like my dad would be the jailer and I'd be the dispatcher, so we would get to work nights together. But so long story, yeah, it was really cool. Long story short though, like I was working 12-hour shifts there. They would work they had a really great schedule where it was like 2 on, 2 off, and every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But then if somebody called in sick, what's half of 12? Add that, to 12.
Jeez.
And then I was driving an hour to go to college, and like my roommates were like, never knew when I was coming or going because I was just filling, part time, and then I was still DJing. I was still working for the DNR, and then there was a deputy that was like, well, maybe you should apply in Fayette County, Iowa, because I heard that they're hiring, and it's only a 15-minute drive. And I was like, makes super good sense. So I applied with the intention of being a part-time dispatcher while I was in college and still DJing and living my best life. And then that was like a year into my career. Well, then they offered me full time after I'd been there like 3 months. And then I had to think long and hard about it because I was like, okay, I'm 19. My grandma said if you start your career young, you can retire young. Like, I think this would be a good thing. I can work nights and go to college during the day and do all these things because I'm fucking Brenda, like
Right. And
whatever.
I'm 19. Shit, I have all the energy.
Yeah. I mean, when it would be 4 o'clock in the morning and like you knew your shift was ending at 7, you're like, I still have that paper to write. You're just like, God, like that motivates you to stay awake. But it was doable. And then not only was I doing that then, but Fayette County was awesome. It was a rural county, very, very small. It's West Union, Iowa. I still have a lot of friends that work there. It's awesome. Like, shout out to my friend Tim. I trained him when I was just young and we were both in college together. And now he's a sheriff at a neighboring county. And like, he loves dispatchers and takes good care of them. And I think we all know where our bread's buttered, right?
Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim.
Yeah. And so I guess you could say I'm second generation law enforcement. My oldest brother was a state trooper. Now he's an investigator. I have another sibling who didn't want to really be in law enforcement. And then, my sister's not, but, for from a family of 6, right? Like, we never had Christmas on Christmas or Easter on Easter ever in the history of ever in all of my years. So,
right. Oh my gosh. What did you study in college? Because we just had a guest on recently who said, like me, you never go to college and then you never work in that field. So
yeah, so I have a couple of associate's degrees in law enforcement, criminal justice, and general science. And then I have a batch. I went with the intention of being a conservation officer. Then I've switched so many times. I went from agriculture broadcasting to conservation officer to criminal justice, and then I had a professor, which he's since passed, so I guess talk shit. But he had like worked at a prison and thought he was the smartest person in the world. And we were having a conversation in class, and they had just changed the law. And he was trying to tell me that 0.08 intoxication was a higher level than point whatever, and just like he would just like mess shit up. And I was like, read a book, and I just got frustrated. So I switched majors to psychology, and I was like, look, I already got associate in criminal justice. Like, maybe I need to understand people better because like do you know what I mean? And then the sociology minor happened, and yeah, I pounded it out in like 4 years, like J term, spring breaks, like nonstop, straight through. Like if I would have stopped, I would never have finished school.
yeah, me too. I got my degree in 3.5 because I was the same way. I was like, if I don't get this done and over with, I will not do it.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So then after I graduated college, I had been applying for all different jobs, honestly. I was like applying for undercover work. I was applying for Border Patrol. I was applying for FBI, CIA, like whatever. Like I could do whatever I wanted, and I landed in Dubuque, Iowa, which was only a few hours away from where I went to college. But I loved coming here and visiting when I was in college. And it was kind of like the Cadillac of dispatch. at the time when I came here. Like everybody knew that like Dubuque was just an elite agency. You'd hear them on the radio, and they always had grace, and like you're in a tri-state area, so think of all the different coordinating that you have to do. And I was very proud and honored to work, for Dubuque, and that's where I worked a majority of my career, which was 16 years. So yeah.
Very nice.
So how many in that comm center did you guys have? Did you dispatch police, fire, and rescue?
Yep, we were the call taker. We were the after hours live answering machine for all city services and department. We dispatched for all county law enforcement, police, fire, dispatch. During the course of my career, we consolidated where we had all the police departments. When I started, one agency had their own little small town dispatch, but we had merged with them. So, gosh, it's been a while, but I mean, Dubuque itself is a pretty big town. And then, we've got, the suburbs, and it's growing. And then you have the rural aspect of it too. We've got a lot of train tracks. We've got a bike track that runs through the county. And like, if you're one of those agencies that have trains and you have multiple train tracks, like, that like they're always changing companies. So being along the Mississippi, we've got Highway 20 running through, which, take you right from Waterloo, Iowa, all the way to, on your way to Chicago. So, but yeah.
So how many dispatchers or call takers, like how many people did you have on a shift in the center? How about that?
So at the last agency, well, the first agency I started for, like I said, one jailer, one dispatcher. And that was crazy. And then when I was in college, it was one, but then we finally got two on the busy nights sometimes, during those peak hours, sometimes on weekends, but usually it was a one-person show. It was really cool to work at Fayette County because they had an old jail, and I got to see a comm center built, right? And like a whole, so that was neat to be a part of the process of that. In Owine, you were the dispatcher, you took lobby calls, you checked on the inmate because it was a 24-hour holding, and you did the paperwork for the officers all at the same time, kind of agency. And then in Dubuque, right, you're looking at like, I don't know, when the time I was dispatching, probably 60,000, right, for the city, so maybe 100,000 plus in the county. This is going to sound crazy, but our minimum was 2 dispatchers for the entire county.
Fuck that.
Oh my God.
You guys, it was crazy. So like, I would have nightmares about like, what if I went and got a fax and my partner was in the bathroom and like we got locked out of the comm center because it was a secure room, or like, and like we're in like the law enforcement agency where there's the police department and the sheriff's office and the jail, and the carport and all of that. So
and the two of you dispatched law enforcement and fire?
Police, fire,
And
dispatch, did EMD, EFD, EPD.
Oh my God.
I mean, on a good night, there was supposed to be 4, but like that never happened because of quote staffing.
Oh my God. Like
Wow.
I worked the 2-man agency that I worked at, we were the PSAP, but we only dispatched fire rescue. And that was probably around, I don't know, maybe 8,000, 9,000 calls for service. The sheriff's office did their own dispatching. So we transferred all the law enforcement calls there. And then where Kacey and I worked, I mean, that was like 100, 150,000 law enforcement calls, like 15,000 fire rescue. And we had a minimum of 4 when I started, and then it bumped up to 5. But I cannot.
Things have changed. I mean, during peak hours, towards the end of my career, we would have 4 dispatchers from 3 in the afternoon till 1 in the morning, and then we were supposed to get, 3 all the time, 4 during the day. And you guys know how that works. If people wanted time off or things like that, it never actually happened.
Oh yeah. Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, that was interesting. I mean, just we used to have this saying, and I don't know if you guys ever had it, but I'll share it with you. You know, like before they do entry, like for a tag team, or like when we get crazy, and you're just like, ah, you know, it's just tits out, tummies in. Like, what else are we gonna do to be ready? Do you know what I mean? Like, just
Right.
take it. You know?
Well,
Just take it, right?
the tits out part I could handle, but the tummy in, yeah, this
Yeah,
FUFO
like
won't allow that.
when all of us, like if there's an accident on a main highway and everybody and their grandma
Right.
calls it in, and our lines
Yeah.
are rolling over to state patrol, they're like, "You guys down?" No, we're just getting hundreds of phone
Right.
calls.
No,
You
right. We're
know,
just right. Right.
yeah,
Whoa. Man.
yeah. Or like, here's like a crazy here's more nightmare shit. But like people be like, "Hi, I'm on Hill Street," thinking it's Hill Street in Dubuque, right? And Dubuque is in Iowa. But
Right.
maybe there's a Hill Street over in East Dubuque, Illinois, right? And
Right.
so cell phone towers bounce. So you just took an Illinois call. So like location, location, location.
Oh yeah. I mean, we just have that with the surrounding counties. I can't even imagine being different states.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
awful.
Oh my God, we used to when I started here, just because you've had to work for different agencies and like learn so many some counties have like a system like, you know, east to west is, 10th Avenue, 20th Avenue, all the way down
Mm.
to whatever by mile and like maybe A Avenue, B Avenue. Nope, not this county. There's no fucking rhyme or reason. It's named after great uncle Earl's friend's brother's
Yep.
horse's cousin. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the road you got to turn on.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. I the first agency I worked for, so and I don't know when Spotsy got 911 addresses, Casey, but when I first went to work, when I first moved to the area, it was like 2002, and I started dispatch I think in 06, and it was like within that time frame I actually got a 911 address because I had some rural route address before that.
Yeah.
And so the county that I worked for, people that lived on these private roads, they like asked them what they wanted to name the roads.
Mhm.
So there was like then there were a couple people I guess that never responded. There was one really crotchety old man, and the name of his road was No Name Road. His house caught on fire one time, and he was really pissed off about that. But hey, you know what? You were apparently really obnoxious to the mapping people,
Right.
and
Right.
then there was a this way and that way. What the I mean,
Yeah.
the most
This
random road names because they let people pick their own, and it was right. So
imagine it being 3 o'clock in the morning and a deputy coming across the radio and saying, "I'm out in the middle of fucking nowhere and there's some cows out and I need
yes,
you to get out to your plat book and find an owner."
yeah, right, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's fucking hilarious.
Right.
You
And so
know?
you're calling people at 3 a.m, like, do you have brown cows?
Yeah, no, I would get on the radio and I'd be like, "Okay, like, can you tell me, are they heifers, bulls, steers, cows?" Right? And then he'd be like, they got horns." And I'd be like, "Okay." And then I'd be like, is it a Jersey, a Guernsey, a Holstein, a beat, like what is it? And he's like, they're white and black and they got spots. And I was like, okay, 10-4. Do they look like the gateway box? And he's like, yes. And I was like,
So it's
okay,
a
at least now we're
Holstein,
working
right?
with Holsteins with horns. Got it. Like that narrows it down. It's just like, work with me, people here, That was one of my favorite calls. Like we give each other shit about that all the time.
That's
So
great.
that makes me think about, what was your mapping system like? Did you have like the other states? Did you have access to their
I worked before the beginning of mapping times when we had just plat books
Oh my God.
and
Okay.
county
Whoa.
and like you did that and you just knew it, right? But then I remember then when I was working in Fayette County, like emergency management at each of the agencies were integrating mapping layers, and then like yes, times eventually we evolved,
Right.
and like you know, like it got to the point where like we had a system where you could actually see like where the officers were on the screen and
Right.
things like that. So yeah, like the one agency I worked for, the deputies would bring in their tickets and you would have to type them on a typewriter on a note card and
Oh,
file them alphabetically before the end of your shift.
whoa.
And type
Wow.
incident reports for every major 911 call. Yeah, like basically it was like the officer's way of getting you to write their report. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
they're just
Oh my
saying,
God.
like, but like times changed also there,
Yeah.
so, and then they made CAD systems, and then, they made like really cool phones, and it's just, like, I don't know. I remember Fayette County had one of those like actual pick up ring extra phones, so that when
Wow.
somebody was training, they could pick up that phone. And it
Right.
was just like,
We had one of those. Yeah,
wow.
the first agency I worked at, we had one of those too. Yeah.
Well, we had
Yeah.
microphones that looked like damn Burger King ordering, want a fucking
Yeah.
Whopper, like
Wah,
that
wah,
kind of thing.
wah.
Yeah, but
Uh,
then I do
yeah.
remember that too. That was
Yeah.
pretty wild.
We've
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it was forever ago, but like just think in 20 years how much it's changed, and like to know that I know people that like had this career that were some of the OGs, right? Like,
right.
the
Yeah.
history of these agencies and how far they've evolved, and I don't know how I got roped into it, but I started doing union work in Fayette County. And so then they'd have a union for dispatch and one for the jail and, one for the deputies. And then when I came to Dubuque, because I was kind of saying it was like the Cadillac of the state, right? I actually left full time to come work part time in Dubuque. The pay was just so much better. And it was like one of those places that you kind of worked your way up. And so I started out part time, and then I was working for the sheriff's office doing transports and working for probation until I got full time. Had a couple of kids, so part time worked out good. But then it was like, okay, now I need like consistent hours, so it's time to go full time. And then I think my kids were 2 and 3 when I went full time, which worked out. I worked nights. Their dad was an officer. He worked days so that we could
Well,
finagle that way. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
So with this 20-year career, how did you manage stress and, how did you maintain the resilience, in that role?
Well, from the union perspective, like you had to be there for everybody's problems. And then you had to negotiate on behalf of your department. And then you had to explain to the fun haters why the importance of a union needed to exist, in like the first place. But as far as like dealing with the stress, I've always been a really active person. So it's not just been dispatching, right? And like I've always worked like other aspects, along the way, but to me, those were a way that like made me a better dispatcher, right? Or those were like also outlets, or you have to stay busy. I actually had some medical issues, and then COVID happened, which a lot of people I'm sure have talked about how horrible it was. But during COVID, essentially I was put in the officer's old lineup room, and I kind of volunteered to be there because I wanted to be away from the drama and just left by myself, right? And like it was like a time to like be alone but just do your job. And it was kind of nice, actually, coming from like the smaller agencies where you could just do your thing. And you know when there was a lot of people and there was a lot of politics, um during my time when I worked for the city, I know we were kind of talking about briefly before we went on, but I actually had a civil rights case. I was my therapist actually put me on FMLA leave, directly due to the nature of the hostile work environment, which was causing problems both in and out of the home. And you had to go talk to somebody. At our agency, they had encouraged like peer support. So then we found out that we could start using it, and then we went to it, and then all of a sudden a bunch of people started going to it, and then they got flooded, so then they cut it. And we're like, but then we're like, oh, we should, go talk to someone about it. And like, realizing that when you talk about these things, we're kind of like superhumans because we hear so much fucked up shit that you can't even
Yep.
make up, right? And so, like, and to this day, people still ask me, like, what's your funniest call? What's your worst call? What's your, and like, you guys know, like, how that is. Like, we all
Yeah,
have them.
we do.
But during, like, my course of the time, like, I learned a lot during my career and I saw that evolve. And because I had experience at other agencies, there was I felt like I was set back at my agency because I was one of those people that voiced my opinion, right? And so we had got a new manager when my kids are now 16 and 17. But when my first child was born, my son, they were so short staffed, they tried to mandate me back early from maternity leave at 6 weeks after having a C-section.
Oh
And this
wow.
is like my first child, right? And so I was like, I'm physically just, I don't want to. I didn't plan on having a C-section. Like, things happen, first time mom, like, isn't family supposed to be first, right? And then that wasn't the case. And then, God, like, they tell you to wait to have sex, but like, I didn't listen. And then my daughter is 10 months and 10 days younger than my son. So it was like, I thought at some point they thought maybe I was just trying to get time off, and like getting maternity leaves, but that wasn't the case. But um, there was just so many things that I observed, and you would try to make complaints, but then you would just be labeled as like the problem child, or, and it wasn't just me. It was other people that through the union that you would see things. So that was interesting, but basically COVID happened. I was on FMLA, which people didn't really know for sure why. I was diagnosed with this thing called fructose malabsorption, which basically your body can't process sugars. It sucks. It's horrible. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. And then I was later diagnosed with, we've all watched Dr. Pimple Popper, and it kind of pisses me off because dispatchers would like make fun of it. But there's these masses that I've had, and they're called multilobulated lipomas, and your nerves get mangled in them. And so I had one removed, and then it was April of 2021 that I found out that I had two the size of my fist in my
Wow.
abdomen. So it was at that time, like, I knew I had a civil rights case against the city, but I was going to be off for surgery, getting masses removed, and my kids were going to be in college, and dispatching was never supposed to be my career, right? Like, I fell into it, the stress of things, I was treated differently. Um, my boss didn't like me, so then he wouldn't send me to training. So then I found the law that says that you have to send me to at least 8 hours a year. So then he sent me to a training in Des Moines. And I know we were kind of talking before before we kind of went on here, but Adam Tim, who is with the Healthy Dispatcher, was putting on the class, and he was kind of talking about burnout and stress and why he left and when he knew it was time to walk away. And it wasn't easy being on FMLA and calling in, but when you felt like you were letting your team down, it was time to walk away.
Yep.
That
And
is,
so you really had to I had to put my health first. And then I just remember like getting my surgery date and calling my attorney and saying, like, pull the trigger on the civil rights case because I'm never going to be able to go back to work after this. And if I don't do anything about it now, I'll never get the courage to do it. And so I had like a surgery date. I called in and I never went back to work. People didn't know that I was having surgery. People didn't know that I had a civil rights case going on. I wasn't the only one in my city that did. There was a female from the police department who had a civil rights case. There was a woman from the fire department who also did. Um, we had became friends, but we all experienced different things. Um, I didn't have what it took in me to heal from surgery, to be in a shitty marriage, and to end up going to trial and testifying and defending myself all at the same time. And so, in my case, it had been going on maybe a little bit longer. I took really good notes about things that happened. I still have boxes of like union crap, just from all those years. Like, what do you do with it, and just like, yeah, it was so hard to walk away. But what I did is when I retired, I did receive like a severance package, and I had my best friend lives out in Las Vegas. I actually took some time. I moved out to Vegas, which culture shock. My daughter will attest to this, right? But like I like to go out there and visit, and that was kind of like my escape. And so it was a place for me to go heal, to see like, do I want to live here? Can I handle the big city? But I would go by traffic stops on the main highways, and I would start crying in Las Vegas because I didn't know what was happening on that traffic stop, because I couldn't be a part of it. And I was like, whoa, that disattachment, not knowing what's going on, that was
Yep.
so hard to give up.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, especially after so many years of doing it, and we've said this multiple times on several different episodes, that's part of, where the tethered part comes from. The name of the podcast, you're tethered in it. It's you. That's it.
Right.
Like, you're not gonna lose it.
Right. Little did I know I needed to go to that training. I needed to hear from Adam. Adam was making it, we were kind of joking around at training, and we hit it off instantly. And he's like, I don't know, Brenda, read a book. And so when I retired and I was recovering, I listened to 150 audio books and read that year while I was off retiring. And like, I needed rest. I just needed some time to recharge and just figure out like what I want to do with my life. And things look different. Like, I still get emotional thinking about it. I still have friends in law enforcement. I miss it. I can help in other ways. I got to be a part of watching dispatchers become a part of the protected class. I advocated so hard for that. And like, why weren't we for so long? The specifics of my case, the things that would happen, the things that people would say, was just so out of this world, uncalled for, unprofessional, just not right, not okay. Like there was a dispatcher that would rather make jokes about picking kids off with a sniper rifle that would run away from the juvenile home rather than having to take the time to enter a missing person report.
Well,
That's not funny. I have kids. And like that person was never disciplined. There's things like we all joke about things and we take them too far sometimes, right? Because we have that sick humor. But
Right.
when I was on FMLA, they would send squad cars by my house to see if I was actually home. Stuff like that. Like, I had to lay low. I was worried about what people would think of me coming forward. Like, you become a whistleblower, right? When you're the one that says, I firsthand know that these things have happened and they are not okay. And I'm not the only one. And, I'm not trying to like cause problems in your centers, but I'm saying if you have a union, be a part of it. You be a part of your voice. You have a say in that. And if you don't like how things are done, then either be a part of it or shut up.
yeah.
I mean, those are your options, or leave. There's the door. I still have so much respect. I have so many friends in dispatch, and I don't know. I mean, I still dabble in things like I fill in for like the Rural Transit Authority when they have their monthly staff meetings. And like they love because like I can like actually handle the radios, you know. And it's like this is a cakewalk. And like I do security now, which is fun, like for different concerts and things like that.
That's
I've
awesome.
worked with some local law firms, like side jobs, like maybe surveillance or like one law firm was doing like mock jury trials. And I was like, you guys know that they never pick dispatchers, right? And I was like, today I'm gonna like prove you wrong, you know. And then I later asked them, I was like, why did you guys pick me? And they're like, because you have strong leadership qualities as a dispatcher, and you know, you're somebody that we would want to be the spokesperson for the jury. So that misconception of all these things, that just because people say them, they're not true, you know, necessarily. As far as stress, like I would try to coordinate monthly get-togethers for dispatchers. We would get together and do karaoke.
Oh, that's fun.
I know it sounds like lame, but we call it vocal therapy. And like we would invite officers and dispatchers, and like to this day, like I still love karaoke. I still sing for therapy. I actually joined a band. Like I get to give back and be involved in my community in different ways. Like I started a little non-for-profit. Like when they say that when you retire and you can literally do whatever you want, it's true. Like don't just limit yourself to just dispatch. Keep your options open. The other things that you do in addition to it are only going to make you better in your job. And like I think that's the problem that we have in dispatch centers, is that we all have different personalities and we're all good at different things. But when we have to work together and you know that you're working with your favorite people, you don't even have to like say anything, because you pick up on cues and you know how to help each other out and communicate and just, I got it, I'll do it. Yeah, I got this, you know. And people will be like, well, I don't like that dispatcher. Okay, that's fine. He might suck on the radio, but you don't realize all the calls that he's handling over the phone for you guys all the time. You know, and so give him some credit. You know, stick up for your dispatchers. Don't be the first one to, don't be a part of the problem. Workplace bullying was like such a thing. And like people made fun of me being adult, talking about how workplace bullying is a thing as in adults, but sure as shit it is. You know, you know, like I was calling legislatures and being like, some of the mass chain emails that like administrators would send out were like, how do they still have jobs? You know, like how are they, like my supervisor at the time had sent out a thing about like Horton hires a hoe and Dr. Seuss my foot up your ass. And like, you know, like how they have like book bans in Iowa, but it's okay to send like memes about that out to your staff. And like, carry on, have a nice day.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, but then one time I got written up for referring to a member of the public as a dick. And I was like, because,
of course, right.
And I was like, okay, like, but he really was being a dick. And like, so what if what if I called him a Richard? Is that okay? You know, like, come on. You know, like different standards, different people, you know.
Yes. Well, that's always a thing. And it's sad that that's always a thing. And then it's so sad that a lot of people get out of the field because of that burnout, because of the administration and the way that things are handled.
Right.
It's not the stress from the job. Now, you know, we've all had those times when you get your, you know, work-life balance gets jacked up and you know, your home life is shit. And like, there's all these, and then it all kind of piles in. But if the administration gave a shit and, you know, actually did put their people first, you could help people through that. And, you know, some of the bigger centers, like now that we've been talking to more people, some of the bigger localities have that, you know, the metro plexes, you know, where they've got huge call centers and, you know, they have that stuff available. But like, you know, we had peer support too. But when it's a pretty intimate agency, people don't always want to go talk to somebody that they don't trust.
Right. And in our agency, they would make fun of people with mental health. So, God forbid you tell somebody that you're going to go talk to a therapist about things that are happening at work. They're going to make fun of you and they're going to pick on you about it. Now things are changing, a couple
Right.
lawsuits later, people
Right.
coming forward, you know, it's just, and think about over that time. And like, I know that we spent a lot of time today and talking about it, but my kids, how they've been impacted, how their holidays were never the same.
Yeah.
Our law enforcement, our Leos, their families, things like that, all because of those things. You go to work and I talk all the time, but if I'm quiet, it's usually because there's a problem. Is there something happening at home? And then when your spouse works for the same department, you don't want to like talk about
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to mix business and pleasure and, just those things. And, I had started a group called the Dubuque Area Blue Families. This was after there was a dispatcher that had got hired part-time with me, and she later became an officer, and she had preemie twins, and so they were in the hospital, and we just started this group for spouses and significant others and families, and the whole like intention was just open arms and a group to come talk to no matter what, no judgment. And there was a couple officers that like their homes had burnt down, and so we raised money for them. We would have like breakfasts, potlucks, things like that. And, my efforts, like they were there. We started, but it's so hard for people to come forward and talk about it because they're afraid or they're embarrassed, but we're all people, and we all experience these things. Like, gosh, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I look back now and there's so many things that I would do differently. And that manager that I was talking about, they're no longer with the agency. But they are in great hands now, with someone that like, God, I was so excited when I found out they got that position, and I'm sure they're going to listen to this call. But on the day that he left, I had turnovers delivered down to the dispatch center because turnover was so high and we weren't allowed to say that word and we weren't allowed to use cell phones either. And so the day that I had them delivered, my cell phone lit up like a Christmas tree, and it was like, haha, Brenda, you're a funny fucker. Like, they all knew it came from me. And I was just like, bye. Like, I might have had to leave first, but you know what? Like, I left for the right reasons. Like, you left because like, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was just things like that it should never have ever had to get to that point. It's like rebuilding a program now, essentially. They're going to get back to being the Cadillac again, but look at how many years they got set back by just one shitty manager. Like,
Right. Yeah, and that always amazes me because when your turnover is high, you're spending so much money on new employees, training, health insurance, all that stuff. And the first agency that I worked for, when I first started, we actually had we worked basically the same schedule that you were working, and we worked 6 to 6, and then we actually had a swing shift that worked 2 to 2.
yeah.
And so from 2 to 2, we'd have, in theory, 3 people on, right? But, people being off and all that, it didn't happen. In the beginning, it happened more frequently. And then we would also get to, like, on that long week, like, we could work only 40 hours. We didn't have to work the 48.
Mhm.
So, we got time off, and you could kind of pick whether did you want to work
Right.
the overtime or not, and it was so nice. And things like, and then one shitty manager,
Right.
and 3 managers later, when they finally got their shit back together and were, getting somebody who was kind of going to stick with it, I did a pay study, and I was, my research found that it was cheaper to have
Yeah.
that swing shift, pay that, technically 4th person, because it was, one
Right.
person for each shift rotation, and than it was to be turning over dispatchers as quickly
Right.
as they had been.
And
And
that such a good point that you brought that up, because when I was 16 years in, right, they're saying that it takes a year to get a dispatcher trained, right? And that's how long they're on probation. And burnout rate is 6 years, right? So I'm like,
Right.
well, shit, I'm 10 years past overdue.
Right.
I'm expired.
Me too. I was too. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
hmm But it was interesting because when we had Dr. Meredith on, she said that the dispatcher burnout rate is like higher early and then also in that like 15, 16-year mark. So
Yeah.
whereas like with law enforcement and fire rescue, it tends to be further down the road. Like they
Right.
may have a bigger attrition early, like within the first 1 to 3 years,
Right.
but then not until after 20, right? And whereas
Right.
we have that like the 6 and the 16, it's like that's it, you know.
Right.
So yeah, and it's just unfortunate, and it doesn't need to be that way, you know.
No, and during this search, I've explored all different, coming from the psych background, right? Like when I wanted to go start talking to a therapist or somebody about it, because like my best friends like didn't need to be hearing it, and like there's just some things that like you shouldn't talk about, or just kind of like, but like then like the really bad calls, right? Like the ones that truly define someone with PTSD, right? That I still think about. I still
Yeah.
get teary-eyed thinking about. They do what's called EMDR therapy for those. And there's so many different things that you can do. You can do karaoke, you can go hot tub, you can travel, you can just go for a car ride and listen to a song. I mean, there's just everybody has like their outlet, their thing, and in your downtime and work, right? Like that is also another area that like what are you doing in your downtime? Like if you don't have work, are you
Right.
bettering yourself? Are you doing training? Are you doing something to make yourself smarter? What are you reading? I mean, just are you like reading your union contract and being like, oh shit, I would like read things and found out that like like do you guys know what falsa pay is? It's like when you work over 12 hours in a 24-hour period, they have to pay you overtime, or when you work more than 40 hours in a week, they have to pay you overtime. And
Right.
like my agency was like, no, we don't. And we're
Mhm.
like, yeah, no, it's the law. And they were like, yeah, no, it's not. And be like, well, okay, if you don't think it's the state law, it sure as shit is a federal law.
Right.
Right.
So then like they'd have to give you back pay for that,
Yep.
and it'd be like, God, like, but it just took like reading and being like, oh, hey, other agencies have come out with this, and like there's a word that I'm gonna like leave with this, and like maybe people start using it more, like negligent retention, right? Knowingly keeping shitty people just to keep a body in the seat isn't a reason, and now the agency that I work for is going through changes. They're going to become, I think, a county agency. We joke about under new management, a bunch of people that left coming back and only working holidays and weekends just to show support of how proud we are to see, like you recognized it, you made the changes. That's all we wanted. Thank you. Now go back to being the best of your area and be proud of it.
That'd be pretty cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, we're in a really unique area. The Midwest it's unique. It's the hub. It's kind of, to me, it's the heart of so many things, Yeah, I was never meant to be a dispatcher in Vegas. Kudos to them, though.
That would be some
Yeah,
shit.
that would probably be super interesting. I can only imagine.
When I was thinking about careers to get back into, and I was out in Vegas, I was like, what would bring me happiness? And I was still recovering from surgery, but the only thing that like really I wanted to do was search and rescue in the canyons. And I was like, yeah, no.
No.
Do you know what I mean? I was like, no.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was Ashley. We were talking about how the Midwest and the tornado situation is not something that we, being on either coast, we're like, no, we don't do tornadoes.
Right.
Like
Right.
when we get a tornado watch or the occasional warning here, it's like, no, the forestry is
Weather is,
not, no.
yeah, we can get tornadoes, we get hail, we get sleet, we get snow, we get flooding. When I remember we had this like really bad rainstorm and trees and electrical poles down and streets flooded. And I remember looking at my call for service screen and I had like over 100 calls and pending one time. And I was like, they'll get to that next Tuesday.
Right. Waiting. Hold please. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
It's just crazy how you can go from one day of like, oh, okay, to, I've worked it all. And it's just, you could never say what's your most known call, or
right.
we're all unique. We've all had crazy experiences. And I think we just need to keep doing what you guys are doing. Keep talking about it, keep promoting it, keep making awareness, and just knowing that like we need more of us and there's good people. And I don't know the right way to recruit for it. Someone that wants to do the job, hopefully long term, and make it fun and unique for them. Make somebody proud to work for your agency,
Yeah.
Right. And I think the whole mental health thing, like just teaching people about the basics, just basically what sort of physiological processes your body can go through, and then what those outlets are. I mean, because we've talked about it before, but we've been to trainings, that were anywhere from 4 to say 24 hours, and they were all sort of like the same. Okay,
Right.
great.
Sometimes you
Like,
would just sign up for training just to get a break, to get away.
right. It's
I
like,
mean, that's sad. That's
yeah,
sad.
and then it's like, well, you can exercise and don't drink and da da da. But they're not telling you about things like EMDR.
Mhm.
I listened to a podcast earlier today. They talked about, I think it's ETMS. Yeah, I had never heard of that before. Like, there's so many things out there that when you start looking
Right.
into it yourself, you can find, but people don't have those resources and they don't know, how
Right.
to get there. And
Right.
so it's
Start
just
start with your like your state agencies, would be my suggestion. And what do we have available from there? And then, it should stem from there. But I agree. I mean, we've all been through a pandemic now, and so now we're more open to expressing our feelings and our concerns and our issues, but why did it have to get that we had to go through all of that to say, I don't have to tolerate this. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, when I retired, I realized that I was no longer going to be the bug, and I would rather be the windshield. You know,
right.
you know what I
Right.
mean? It's just like, think about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brenda. This has been
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And
We kind of talked about a little of everything, I feel
we
like.
kind of did. Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
usually do. We
Yeah.
we
We,
just
we we do that squirrel thing, the dispatcher thing, like,
Our
it
attention
just you
spans
can go
right.
everywhere. Yeah.
that anxiety, that need to stay busy, it never goes away. But if you learn how to channel it in better ways, or be productive, like, think of all the things you can do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well,
Yeah.
before we let you go, we do this thing that we've started, little rapid fire questions, which you don't know anything about.
Oh God.
Surprise. But it's nothing like,
They're fun and short.
they're
So
just, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So would you prefer texting or talking?
Talking.
Are you an early bird or a night owl? Which I
Night
think
owl.
we've already figured that out. If you
19
had
years a night.
the superpower, would you want to have the invisibility or super strength?
Invisibility.
That is, I
why
don't even
that's
know why
just
we
an
asked
accurate
that,
answer.
because that is definitely the go-to for all of us.
I mean, let's think about that. Like, we just got done talking. Like, we're
Yeah,
already strong, right? Like, we
right.
get to define our own strength, so
That is
we can
true.
work on that one on our own.
Yeah.
That is
And we're all
true.
just nosy, so we would be a fly on the wall anywhere.
Yeah.
Dude, like dispatchers, like when they say that like we're little FBI agents, like that, like
It's the
when I get
truth.
picked up for surveillance jobs, like the way I blend in my unique touch is like I
Well, I
got it.
still do that shit now, and I'm not even dispatching anymore. But all right,
The funniest thing to tell people is when they ask what your career is to tell them that you work for the streets. Because technically you work for the, so then they translate that to like what, public works, street department,
Right.
road. I work for the
Right.
streets.
That's funny.
Sounds
that is
gangster.
funny. Well, yeah. Well, we are OGs. I mean, because we've all got the time, for the most part. But well, we do appreciate you being on. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, good luck in your adventures, and I bet you guys are gonna have
Thanks.
some more awesome guests to follow.
Well, we hope so. If you know anybody out there that's dispatching in
Well,
public
I already
safety, and
name dropped a couple of people, so I'll
yeah,
tell them to reach out to you.
Definitely.
They'd be great people to have
definitely.
there.
Yeah, that's the whole
Yeah.
point. We have a lot of fun doing this. We're not really looking to get any like famous or anything like that, but we're just, we have a lot of fun, and this is exactly what this platform is for. So
That's when you're passionate about something, it's fun. And
it
so when it
is.
stops being fun, then you know it's not meant to be.
Right.
Yep.
There you go. And we'll
And
leave
with
it at
that
that.
note, we will
All
end
right.
with that.
Wrap it up.
Right.
Well, thanks, Brenda, so much for joining us.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all, for listening to another episode of 911 Delta Tethered for Life. Remember to rate and review, because apparently that does help other people find the podcast. You can also share it with your friends. We would love that. And turn on your notifications on whatever app you're using, YouTube, whatever. Turn on your notifications, rate, review, follow, whatever it asks you to do, just do it. And on that note, I just want to leave you guys with some big shout outs from our family this week. Lake of the Woods Fire Department, you are amazing. City of Fredericksburg, City of Manassas, Loudoun County, even Stafford County. These are all in Virginia, if you don't know. You guys are amazing, and thank you so much for showing up for my family this week. I love you all. Talk to you next time.
Just
Right.
take it. You know?
Well,
Just take it, right? You're taking it. Now we're getting into the theme of dispatching.
Before we get to the real deal later on.